Hello, welcome everyone. Today let's discuss the famous English writer John Fowles. John Fowles was born in England in Essex on 31st March 1926 and died on 5th November 2005. He was an English novelist and whose elusive and descriptive works combine psychological probings, chiefly sex and love, with an interest in social and philosophical issues. His full name was John Robert Fowles. John Robert Fowles was his full name. So his novels are marked with the psychological probings into the characters' mindsets and thoughts. His first novel was The Collector. It was published in the year 1963 and later filmed in 1965. 2 years after it was filmed. The first novel is The Collector. It's about a shy man who kidnaps a girl in a hapless search for love. It was an immediate success. And next is another fiction is The Magus. It was published in 1965 and next edition was coming out in 1977 and filmed in 1968. This novel, Magus, the Magus was set on a Greek island and the book centers on an English teacher who struggles to discern between fantasy and reality after befriending a mysterious local man. Okay, the setting is a Greek island. Next famous work by John Fowles is The French Lieutenant's Woman. The French Lieutenant's Woman was filmed in 1981. It was published in 1969 and filmed in 1981. Okay, and it is arguably Fowles' best known work and it's a love story. And setting is 19th century England. Okay. And next work is The Ebony Tower. The Ebony Tower was published in 1974. Okay. And the last novel by John Fowles is The Maggot. The Maggot is his last novel and it is centered on a group of travelers in the 1700s and the mysterious events that occur during their journey. In addition to writing novels, he tried his hand on writing essays and poems, but those were not that much attractive or popular to the readers. And he is famous for his novel, that is French Lieutenant's Woman. Let's go in detail into this novel. The French Lieutenant's Woman is a novel published in the year 1969 and it is actually a historical romance. This novel can be included in the genre called historical romance, and in this novel we can see the juxtaposition of the 2 years, 1867 and 1967. That means the characters and incidents are all from the year 1867. As you all know, it is Victorian period. And the writer is in the year 1967 and he is making an ironic commentary. Okay, he is making an ironic commentary on the characters and their actions, incidents, etc. who are living in the year 1867. Okay, so 2 years can be interwoven in this novel. Next, the most important characters are Charles Smithson, Ernestina Freeman, and Sarah Woodruff. Okay, definitely this novel is a love story, and Charles Smithson is the main character or hero of this novel. He is a Victorian paleontologist. Okay, he is a Victorian paleontologist, a person who is studying on fossils, etc. And he is engaged to Ernestina Freeman. And she is a conventional wealthy woman. But later he is breaking off the engagement with Ernestina, and this man, Charles Smithson, is more attracted to Sarah Woodruff, and the later incidents following this relationship is mentioned in this novel. Sarah Woodruff is a social outcast and locally known as a forsaken lover of a French lieutenant. Okay, she was given up by a French lieutenant after having a long time love relationship. That is why she is known as the French lieutenant woman, and she has a very bad reputation among the society. And this Charles has the relationship with Sarah, and the following incidents are mentioned in this novel. As I said earlier, this novel is set in the Victorian England, which had very strict social norms, especially upon the women. And Sarah Woodruff is the woman of the title, and she is known among the people as a tragedy and as the French lieutenant's war. And before, she had a relationship with a French lieutenant named Vargunes, and later, after so many years, he is abandoning her and he is returning to France and getting married to another woman. And here Sarah is living lonely. So employed as a servant, she is employed as a servant in the household of very pious Mrs. Pulteney, and she spends some of her limited free time on the Cobb stone jetty where she stares out to sea. Okay, so that's about Sarah. And one day Charles Smithson is an orphan, and his fiancée Ernestina Freeman are coming to this place, this cliffside. I told you earlier, Sarah usually sits on this Cobb in her free times, this cliff area, and by coincidence these two people, Charles and Ernestina, are coming to visit the place. And Ernestina is a daughter of a wealthy tradesman named Mr. Freeman, and Ernestina tells Charles about Sarah's story, and hearing that, Charles becomes curious about her. Though continuing to court Ernestina, Charles has several more encounters with Sarah, meeting her 3 times. Okay. And during these meetings, Sarah tells Charles of her history and asks for his emotional and social support. During the same period, he learns of the possible loss of his place as heir to his elderly uncle, who has become engaged to a woman young enough to bear a child. Meanwhile, Charles' servant Sam falls in love with Mary, the maid of Ernestina's aunt. In fact, Charles has fallen in love with Sarah and advises her to leave uh, and returning from a journey to warn Ernestina's father about his uncertain inheritance. Charles stops to visit Sarah. From there, the narrator intervenes throughout the novel and later becomes a character. He offers, the narrator, the author himself, offers three endings to the novel. First ending is Charles does not visit Sarah again and immediately returns to Ernestina. And he marries Ernestina, though the marriage never becomes particularly happy. And Charles enters trade under Ernestina's father, Mr. Freeman, etc. And that's the first ending. It is the happy ending found in actual Victorian novels. And the second ending. Before the starting of this second ending, the narrator come author tosses a coin to determine the order in which he will portray the other two possible endings, emphasizing their equal plausibility. So second ending is Charles and Sarah have a rash sexual encounter in which Charles realizes that Sarah was a virgin. Reflecting on his emotions during this, Charles ends his engagement to Ernestina and proposes to Sarah through a letter. Charles' servant Sam fails to deliver the letter, and after Charles breaks his engagement, Ernestina's father disgraces him. His uncle marries and his wife bears an heir, and ensuring the loss of the expected inheritance. To escape the social suicide and depression caused by his broken engagement, Charles goes abroad to Europe and America. Ignorant of Charles' proposal, Sarah flees to London without telling her lover. During Charles' trips abroad, his lawyer searches for Sarah, finding her 2 years later living in the Chelsea house of the painter and poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti, where she enjoys an artistic creative life. Sarah shows Charles the child of their affair, leaving him in hope that the three may be reunited. A very complicated ending, right? Okay. And the third ending proposed by the narrator come writer is the narrator reappears outside the house of Sarah and turns back his pocket watch by 50 minutes. Events are the same as in the second ending version until Charles meets Sarah, when their reunion is soured. The new ending does not make clear the parentage of the child, and Sarah expresses no interest in reviving the relationship. Okay, beginning is just like the second one, but towards the end, towards their reunion, with Charles, Sarah is not at all expressing any interest, and Charles leaves the house intending to return to the United States, wondering whether Sarah is a manipulative, lying woman who exploited him. With this doubt, he is going back to United States. That is the third ending given by the writer. Then other minor characters mentioned in this novel are Sam Farrow. Sam Farrow, I told you earlier, he is Charles' servant, and throughout the novel, Sam becomes the narrator's model for the working class peoples of Victorian Britain. Okay, and he represents the working class of Victorian Britain. Then Dr. Grogan. Dr. Grogan is an Irish doctor in the town, and he advises the various upper class families in the town and becomes an advisor to Charles. His education and interest in Darwin and other education make him a good companion for Charles. Okay, a good friend of Charles, that is Dr. Grogan. Then Mr. Freeman. I told you earlier, Mr. Freeman is father of Ernestina, Charles' fiancé. He is a very wealthy man by having a business in clothes, drapery, etc. And he represents the rising entrepreneurial class in England. And he stands in stark contrast to the old money which Smithson comes from. Okay, then Mrs. Trant. Mrs. Trant is a prominent member of Lime Ridge's society who is a friend of Grogan, Mr. Grogan, and his material and maternal aunt. Okay. Okay. Then Mrs. Poltney. Mrs. Poltney is a wealthy widow at the beginning of the novel, an employer of Sarah Woodruff, where Sarah was working for helping Mrs. Poltney in her home affairs. And Mrs. Poltney is a hypocritical, hypersensitive woman, and she's a complete archetype of high society villainess. Okay, high society abusive mentality towards suffering people. Next, Mary. Mary is a stereotypical lower class servant to Mrs. Tranter and a future wife to Sam Farrow. Okay, this Mary is Mrs. Tranter's servant, and she is marrying Charles' servant Sam. And Montag, Charles Smithson family lawyer. Okay, and he is 2-3 years older than Charles and helps his client in search of Sarah. Okay, he's helping Charles in his search of Sarah towards the end of the novel. Okay, and about the style and structure of this novel. This novel can be included under the postmodern literature, and he has used major postmodern narrative techniques like fragmentation, multiple points of view, intertextuality, metafiction, historiographic metafiction, etc. Throughout the novel, we can see an omniscient narrator. The author himself intervenes into the major incidents of this novel. So, author is acting as an omniscient narrator throughout this novel, and he has recreated a Victorian novel with an ironic sense and mockery. And to create the Victorian novel, John Fowles does not namely use Victorian conventions. He used Victorian convention but with a decent portion of parodic skepticism. He sets his novel in Victorian time. He portrays all characters except Sarah in the light of Victorianism. And another one, footnote. Another technique is footnote or epigraph on the head of each chapter to make readers skeptically aware of multiplicity of Victorian voices. John Fowles has made use of this technique of adding epigraph or footnote. Fowles makes use of the technique of epigraph to give every impression of being devoted to recreating Victorian novel. Since the French Lieutenant's Woman is a metafiction, the author certainly intrudes into the narrative structure. In chapter 13 elsewhere, John Fowles has entered into the narrative structure. This intrusion into the narrative structure gave him ample opportunity to comment upon the Victorian convention. The fourth experimentality or important technique in this novel is giving a multiple ending to the novel. For the traditional reader, a happy ending is given, resulting in Sarah's accepting Charles Smithson. For the Victorian readers are given successful completion of Ernestina and Charles' engagement. For the modern readers, the tragic separation between Sarah and Charles is given. These multiple endings enable John Fowles to hint at his abandonment of literary omniscience. And the novelist enters into the structure of the narrative and talks to other characters, discusses their problem and fixes a course of action for them. The intrusive novelist seems like a character in this novel. And also it is a feminist novel. And this novel is considered to be a feminist novel by a number of critics. And they have debated because this novel offers sufficiently transformative perspective on women. The novel's narrator demonstrates and proclaims a feminist approach to women. Sarah is presented as a more liberated and independently willed woman as compared to the other model female characters, such as Ernestina and her aunt. And Fowles' presentation of Sarah is one of the most enigmatic female characters in literary history, and it is also psychoanalytically informed. Fowles himself was interested in the psychology of men and women. The enigma of femininity, myth of masculinity, and impossibility of man-woman relationship are some of the crucial themes. Though Sarah is treated as a tragedy or war in the society, Sarah's deliberate spreading of lies about herself and her relationship with Charles Fowles brilliantly brings about the various aspects of femininity that has the potential to authenticate, threaten, and expose the vanity of the male subjects. This novel is a metafiction also. What is a metafiction? Metafiction is a form of fiction which emphasizes its own constructedness in a way that continually reminds the audience to be aware they are reading or viewing a fictional work. That willing suspension of disbelief will not be there. Okay, that's the difference of metafiction. Metafiction is a self-conscious about language, literary form, and storytelling, etc. This novel is a historiographic metafiction. Okay, historiographic metafiction means it's a term coined by Canadian literary theorist Linda Hedgen in the late 1980s. Okay, and historiographic metafiction incorporates three domains: fiction, history, and theory. Okay, fiction, history, and theory. These three are incorporated in a historiographic metafiction, and definitely we can say the French Lebanese woman is the best example for historiographic metafiction. Another feature is intertextuality. Intertextuality, that means intertextual references within the novel. Like in epigraphs for each chapter, the book gestures towards a number of important 19th century texts and ideas, like Thomas Hardy, Charles Dickens, George Eliot, William Thackeray, Linda Hedgen, etc. Okay, so major writers of the Victorian era, William Thackeray, George Eliot, Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, are their writings. Some of the major parts of their novel are mentioned in the epigraphs. So intertextuality is also there in this novel. And also Darwin, Charles Darwin's theory, publications, etc. are also mentioned in this. Like that, science and religion. Science and religion means about science, Darwinism, Darwin's findings against the faith. Then religion. Religion means Victorian is the first neo-Victorian novel to handle dynamic created between science and religion in Victorian identity. As you know, in the Victorian society there was a conflict between science and religion, and it is really portrayed in this novel. Okay dears, these are all about the famous novel French Lieutenant's Woman, its summary, themes, structure, etc. Hope all of you have understood the major points. Thank you all for listening to me for this time. Thank you. Bye bye.